The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazell was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified. UFO Classified. No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Well, happy Fantopia Friday, my friends. I'd like to thank everyone for joining me, and every week I get into the chat room and see new faces. I'd like to say thanks to Gabe and Susan and Parawanders and all these wonderful people who are tuning in and trying to get good information as we all learn and progress in this field, and that's an important thing to do. Speaking of getting good information, last weekend I had the pleasure of attending the Utah UFO Festival. It was the second year, and this event was put on by Nathan Kowlishaw, he's in his 20s. He has a heart of gold, and I commend him. There were about 300 people there. The Navajo Rangers were there, and I was blown away. I got the chance to talk to them in private about some of their experiences and what they felt we could do to protect ourselves when we're going into areas like Skinwalker Ranch or areas where there are things that are perhaps a little bit more malevolent at play. They were wonderful. They lectured, and it was after dark, and they mentioned skinwalkers. They did a whole segment on skinwalkers, and they shared their personal experiences and experiences of others. And interestingly enough, that night at our camp, we heard some very unusual sounds that were surrounding our tents, and when we went out to look, there was nothing there, and that took place all night. It was a little unnerving. Who knows what it was, but it was quite unusual. Interesting timing. Big thanks to Ron Regehr and Chris O'Brien, all my friends that were there, Cliff Mahooty. It was a wonderful time. Next weekend, I won't be here live because I will be at the ECETI Ranch. I am lecturing there, and I will also be doing field research in this location, which is a hot spot. There are many hot spots around the world, and I try to focus my research on that and then bring in guests who have things to share about different locations that are seeing similar types of activity. And my fabulous guest tonight is somebody who can share a great deal about his research in Brown Mountain. Brown Mountain is similar to all of the goings-ons at the Yakima Indian Reservation, Hessdalen, Norway, Skinwalker Ranch, Alabama, you name it. There are places like this all over the world, and this is truly where I believe we need to focus our research. We need to get equipment in there, learn how to use it, and collect good data, but we'll talk a little bit more about that as the evening progresses. Tonight's going to be an action-packed night, and I know that we've got a guest caller calling in with questions for Joshua Warren. Joshua is somebody who I have known about for a long time. In fact, I've got a really wrinkled and weathered book on my desk that I've had probably for at least 10 years. It's called How to Hunt Ghosts, a Practical Guide. I feel that using some of this information as far as ghost hunting, this carries over to our work in UFO research, and I think this is really cool. I've always been fascinated by the paranormal, and we might have to talk about a certain creepy doll tonight, which I love this story. Joshua wrote his first book at the age of 13. That's incredible. He's published more than a dozen books, including regional bestseller Haunted Asheville, How to Hunt Ghosts, which I just mentioned, and Use the Force, A Jedi's Guide to the Law of Attraction. He is the president of a multimedia productions company, Shadowbox Enterprises. His articles have been published internationally, and he has been at he spoke at UFO Congress. In fact, I met Josh and his wife at UFO Congress a couple years ago. You can see him on many of the different TV shows, and I'm going to let him just talk a little bit more about his impressive career. Joshua, thank you so much for being on the show. I have waited for a long, long time to get you on.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I cannot tell you how much that I admire you and the work that you are doing and this wonderful program, and so I'm thrilled to be with you tonight, Erica, so thank you, and I know we're going to get into some good stuff tonight.
Oh, Lordy, and I just have to say I've been listening to interviews with you, and if I was married to you, I don't know what I would have to sleep with a crucifix.
Yeah, I think my wife would agree with that. I do not claim to be the husband of the year. Sometimes my wife becomes the unwitting guinea pig in some of my experiments. And just recently, as a matter of fact, I produced what I call a paracymatic sigil, which maybe we can get into that tonight at some point, but it's a symbol that's supposed to attract ghosts. And so I put it on the bedroom door when she was asleep at night. And, me, I'm a nocturnal fella. So about 4:30 in the morning, I'm watching TV, but she came downstairs and she said, "Have you been coming into the bedroom?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, this house must be haunted then because something keeps shoving me." And I'm like, yes, I achieved the goal. And then I explained to her what I'd done, and she was not happy. So I will not be putting that sigil on the bedroom door anymore.
Yeah, you are, you're quite naughty then, I would say. I mean, do you ever feel like, because you've been into this your whole life, and you have had some pretty interesting experiences with the paranormal, with UFOs, with all of this. And I mean, do you ever feel like you have anything negative that's attached to you?
I honestly have had some experiences that altered my view of, how I select the things that I research. I mean, for years, I used to think that the idea that some kind of a spirit or something like that could follow you around or attach to you was just silly. But that all changed when I went to a house in South Carolina. This was, probably, I'm going to say now, certainly over 10 years ago, where some very negative stuff had been occurring. And I did a big investigation there. I got back to my house that night in the wee hours of the morning, and I was sitting in my office working, and all of a sudden, at once. Now imagine all this happening at once. I'm sitting here in my little office typing away at my computer. Suddenly, the door to my office blew open as if there were some gust of wind, and my stereo turned on full volume. It scared the bejesus out of me. I jumped out of my skin. The first thing I did was run over and unplug the stereo, and I knew there were no batteries in there, and it continued to play. And not just for a few seconds like some capacitor was charged up or something. I mean, this thing, I could not get it to stop. And every hair on my body was on end. I got goosebumps, and I knew something had entered this room with me. And I just turned, and immediately all I did was actually started screaming and cursing at it and telling it, "This is my house. You are not allowed to be here." And then it was as if suddenly the air was sucked out of the room and it was gone, and it never came back again. That was my first time that I actually felt that something had followed me back from one of these locations.
Wow. And, I always look at, I watch Ghost Adventures sometimes when I have to. But, I watch some of these shows, and I remember, back in my late teens and early 20s, I was playing with the Ouija board. I was going on ghost hunts and really looking for stuff to happen. And the older I've gotten, and I'm sure you feel the same way, I have so much more respect for this. And recently on Ghost Adventures, they did, and I'm not sure if it's aired yet, but they were out in a skinwalker territory. I don't think it was in the Uinta Basin, but they were out there trying to do some incantations to call in skinwalkers. And I thought, wow, to me, that's bordering on irresponsible.
Well, some people ask me, they say, do you think that what you're doing is a good thing? You're out there, you're trying to open portals sometimes. You're trying to tamper with this interdimensional boundary. And the fact of the matter is, in the beginning, when I first started investigating, ghost phenomena, I did not go out trying to trigger or stimulate activity. I would simply go to places where it was supposedly already happening, and then I would observe that. But as time went on, and I started seeing things that convinced me there's something to this, I became frustrated because I felt that if this is happening, I need to be able to document it properly. And the problem is, of course, it's very difficult to get these things to happen in a somewhat controlled setting where you can document it. And so I did actually cross that line at some point where on occasion I have used every type of mechanism you can imagine, technologically and mentally. Maybe not everyone, because, I haven't ever tried to conjure up a demon or something. I'm not going to go that far. But I have done a lot of things to try to enhance paranormal activity or see if I could create it. And I've had a lot of success doing that. And there are people who say, man, you shouldn't be doing this. And I can't honestly tell you whether or not in some cases it is responsible or not to do this. But I think it's important to at least acknowledge that it can be done and that we can document it.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think for people like us who understand the gravity of the situation and understand that things can come home and they can be really insidious and affect your life in ways you can't even imagine, I think that it's a bit different for us than maybe, I look at this particular episode I was talking about, and I just think how many young people are going to see this and then go out and try this without understanding what could really happen?
Well, yeah, I think certainly the problem with media in general is that it is designed to be, for the most part, entertainment. Even if you're watching what is called news, it's still designed ultimately to be entertainment. And real research is boring. It takes a long time. I mean, 90+% of your time is just sitting around waiting when nothing is happening. But it's that small percentage of the time when things actually occur that make that 90+% of the time worthwhile. And so I always, however, am very quick to say, look, I have been involved in every form of media you can imagine, whether it's radio or TV or feature films or tourism. I mean, I've been self-employed since I was 18 years old because I understand how to take the research that I do and the things that I enjoy and love and also make money off of those things. So I know how the commercial side works, but I want to be very, very clear that there is a big difference between the entertainment side of this and the real research side of it. So I don't think you can trust anything that you see on TV as being entirely accurate. And unusually it's overblown to be much more impressive or dangerous than it is in person, frankly.
Absolutely. And you're right, because I've been on some field research studies and it's just like, okay. Sit around, and luckily I have been with people that I can have good conversations with, and I'm in beautiful locations so you can go explore, but it is a lot of sitting around and waiting, and perhaps some of the younger generation, they don't have a great attention span. And so it's going to be harder for us to encourage them to have the patience to sit out there and wait for something to happen to collect data.
Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately, all research is sort of the same in terms of the approach. I mean, I always follow the scientific method, meaning it starts with simply observing, and then once you observe long enough, you look for patterns and correlations, things that seem like they might relate to cause and effect, and then once you see those patterns, you try to come up with some kind of a test that you can do in a controlled setting. And then, you might have a hypothesis that you would use, that you would apply to that test. And then if it works out enough with a cause and effect, eventually you might have a belief or some type of a theory. And so that is the approach that I use for my research. However, there comes a certain point when you might reach this level where you say, okay, some of these things happen so erratically that I don't have enough years in my life to sit here and properly document this. So I do form some conclusions that I might toss out there, but I never say this is the truth, this is a fact. I'm saying this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm believing right now, and I'm always willing to be told I'm wrong or to have something I say to be disproven or disproved.
What a good human being. And we don't have enough of that in this field, I think that there's so much ego that is pervasive and that really hampers our research. We're studying something unknown. And so to have that humility like you do is an important thing for all of us.
Well, thank you for saying that. That's a wonderful compliment. And I feel that it's very important for us to realize that if you go back just 10 years ago and you look at the world we lived in, you see how much more that we know now than we did then. I think it's mind-boggling that scientists did not accept the idea that dinosaurs were around until the 1800s. The bones have been there as long as humans have been around, but it took until the 1800s for us to, confirm that. It was in 1903, I guess, when the Wright brothers made their first flight. For thousands of years, people have been trying to fly. The other day, I was driving down the road, and I look over, and here's a dude sitting there with one of these, parachute type deals over his head with a big fan behind him, just flying along like nothing. And I'm thinking, God, this would have been a god in ancient times. This dude just flying around here having fun killing time this morning. So it's amazing to me that we have so many people out there who actually believe that we know everything right now and are so quick to shoot down things that other people might propose that they don't quite grasp or understand.
Well, amen and hallelujah on that. And it is always shocking to me. People are so entrenched in their belief systems, and this isn't about a belief system. This is a fact here. We're dealing with things we don't have control over. We're dealing with other living beings, entities, and like you say, we're not where it begins and ends. And I think the more NASA releases, the more we get workout like they've done, Erling Strand has done in Hessdalen and places like that, we will come very quickly to the conclusion that, we know virtually nothing.
Well, if you talk to the smartest cosmologists and astrophysicists out there, they will admit that given all of our technology and all the budgets that are available for scientific exploration, still over 95% of the observable universe can be considered dark matter or dark energy, which is defined by the very fact that we have no idea what it is. And so if I handed you a cup and I said, hey, drink this, and you say, what is it? And I said, well, 5% of it is apple juice. And you say, okay, well, what's the other 95%? And I say, I have no idea. You might think twice about drinking that. And so what that means is that if this is actually the fact, then what we have to accept is that we not only do not know what is happening here, but we do not know by a vast, vast degree.
Isn't that amazing? And with some of the experiences that you've had, I'm sure that the experience, I've been, like I said at the beginning of the show, I've been listening to you speak, and I've been doing that for a long, long time because I'm a big fan of your work. But the experiences that you've had, you've really pushed the boundaries. And I'm glad that you've got a really supportive family.
Yes, I'm very fortunate. And my family and my friends, I was raised, of course, in Asheville, North Carolina, the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's literally Billy Graham land. I mean, that's where Billy Graham lives, in Western North Carolina. And there's a church on every corner. And so the irony is, people in my neighborhood, so to speak, were very spiritually minded. And the idea of believing in God and prayer and miracles and angels and all that stuff is actually paranormal. People don't think of it that way, but it is. And so I grew up in an environment where people were open to these things that are paranormal, but at the same time, they had a very specific limit on what they would accept. And so, when I started studying, some of these more occult things, I would take heat growing up. I mean, there were people who accused me of being involved with devil worship or some kind of, dark art or whatever. And that was just because that I was opening myself to saying, look, there is a lot around us that we don't understand. Some of it may be negative, some of it may be positive, but I am just curious and I want to understand it. I'm not necessarily going out there and becoming involved in everything. I'm just researching it. I'm studying it. I'm writing about it. And so that I think gives a little nuance to the fact that I was in a situation where a lot of people did not necessarily know what my agenda was and where I was coming from. But my mother, my father, my whole family have always been very supportive. They believed in me. They understood the approach I was taking. And I'm the luckiest guy on the planet that I had good parents who still to this day love and support me and help me in every way possible.
Isn't that wonderful? And I feel the same way about my family. My mother raised me to be intelligent, to be thoughtful and kind to other people, but to also have an open mind and to understand that reality isn't necessarily what it seems. And it's been fun, I think, for both of us to watch me progress in the field. And she loves hearing stories and is proud of what I'm doing. So I can relate. And I think that we're really blessed to have supportive families.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that obviously defines who you are. And, here I am. I'm 40 years old. I'll be 41 in a few months. And I do not have kids by choice. And that is because I don't feel like that I could be a good parent. And my wife feels the same way. And that's because we're always on the go. We're always traveling. We're always moving around. We're always, looking into weird things. And I think it takes a lot of time and attention to focus on a child. And so I don't have that time. And I'm very lucky that my mom and dad had that time and that stability to help me grow the way I did.
Well, I think you're fantastic, and I just want to say we're going to take a break, but thanks for getting into chat. I am here with Joshua P. Warren, and you can find him on joshuapwarren.com. We're going to talk a little bit more about the paranormal, Puerto Rico UFO sightings, portals, much, much more, so stick around. We will be right back.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
With Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this. Bowl for Life is a non-profit organization founded in 2013 by Chuck Gardner with one simple goal: to grow the sport of bowling worldwide. Over the years, Bowl for Life has given out thousands of dollars in scholarships to youth bowlers around the world. Our focus is to nurture integrity, honesty, professionalism, as well as respect into bowlers both young and old. You can help us by going to bowlforlife.com. Even the smallest donation goes a long way to breaking down the barriers and helping us assist people of all ages to improve their skills as well as knowledge of the game. Bowl for Life is happy to be partnered with other great organizations like the Youth Education Services Fund, as well as the United States Bowling Congress, with many spectacular integrated events planned in the near future. To learn more, go to bowlforlife.com. That's bowlforlife.com.
Paranormal. Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal.
The U.S. military holds the ability to time travel.
Jeremy Scott asks the questions that we're all dying to know.
Wow, that's a remarkable question.
Watch your step. Hide under your blankets.
The show that is going to make you think.
Prepare yourself for what you're about to hear.
This transmission is coming to you.
You're riding into the Parabnormal.
Live Saturday night, 6 to 9 on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
What if maintaining a healthy weight was as simple as drinking a cup of coffee? With Valentis Coffee, it's that easy. Harvested from the world's most pristine coffee farms and packed with the purest ingredients on earth, Valentis takes losing weight to a completely new level. At Valentis, we believe everyone deserves a chance to be healthy and fit. It's pure, natural, healthy, and delicious. Click the Valentis Healthiest Coffee banner on the KCOR Digital Radio Network website and take the Weight Loss Guarantee Challenge. Valentis Coffee, simply the world's healthiest coffee.
Alien Deceptions, a suspenseful sci-fi romance thriller by Tina Marie, featuring the tantalizing Erica Jones and the mysterious Russell Hamilton. An out-of-this-world book of fiction based on years of document facts and files the government does not want you to know about. At least, not yet. Alien Deceptions by Tina Marie. Available now at Amazon.com or get a signed copy at TinaMarieEntertainment.com. Get your copy now.
I'm jumping in with my clothes on.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb, but if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Learn more at ultimatepartyfoul.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
Welcome back and happy Fantopia Friday. I'm Erica Lukes. Always happy to be here, especially when I see all my friends in chat and get messages from all of you. And I am very happy to report that I have listeners from all over the world that are here, that are sharing ideas with me, sharing their experiences. And this is important. You are the reason that I'm here, and I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. I hope every week I can provide you with good information so you can get out there and do investigating. You can open your mind and find quality research. My guest this evening is somebody who's done that for a long, long time. When I opened the show, I mentioned that I had in my possession a really worn out book called How to Hunt Ghosts. It is by Joshua P. Warren, and he is an internationally recognized expert on the paranormal. He lives in Puerto Rico, which he's down there, and I'm just so jealous because it sounds absolutely beautiful. There have been some very unusual UFO events taking place down there, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But when we left off, we were talking about so many different things. We talked about portals. We talked about South Carolina and your childhood, your family. So I have to ask you, when you got involved with the paranormal and you kind of went down this path and you had the support of your family and friends, where did you decide that you wanted to focus your energy?
Well, in the beginning, I was focused on ghosts, and which it's funny because I'm a big fan of that quote by Charles Fort, and the quote is, "You can measure a circle beginning anywhere." So what you find when you become involved with all this is that you might start with ghosts, but eventually you'll see the connection between ghosts and UFOs and cryptids and psychic phenomena. It all really does converge, and that really ticks off a lot of people, because some people, they don't, like, for example, a lot of people in the UFO field say, well, this has nothing to do with ghosts and cryptids. That's just muddling up the whole field.
Oh, please.
And I do not, I don't see it that way, because you find, again, a big crossover, but that's a whole other direction we can go. Ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, Ghost was a great starting point, because investigating ghosts, it calls into question the relationship between matter and energy. So, in other words, some people who, let's say, the most absolute, strict, atheistic, rational, materialistic scientist might believe that when you die, what happens to the energy that is contained in a body is no different than what happens to a cigar. Every time you take a puff, it just turns into little particles that just float away into the air and back into nature. And that is one point of view. That may actually be the case. On the other hand, what if there is something else there that is an energy mold that has some kind of form, some kind of structure that we actually are sort of stuck with, that forms our identity, our personality, that is somehow a part of who we are as conscious, self-aware beings. And so starting with ghost research gave me a really good sort of reference point there for looking into how all these other things might also exist in some form, and how that the relationship between matter and energy might vary with each of them as well. So I don't see ghosts or cryptids or UFOs or aliens necessarily as being some kind of nicely structured, neat little things that we can put into this file in the filing cabinet. No, I think that probably the reason that these are great mysteries that we don't understand is because by the standards of human intelligence, they're kind of sloppy and they blur lines that we're uncomfortable with.
Exactly. And you brought up a great point about the fact that people in the UFO community are brushing off the paranormal. I think we saw that a lot in MUFON. At least I noticed that a lot, and that was, to me, unfortunate because you're omitting important data.
Well, I think in general, people always have a tendency to try to identify something in terms of people. It's the egocentric kind of approach. And that's why, like, for example, I recently put this 12-minute video report on YouTube called "Oh, UFOs, A New Discovery," and which is a bit of a sensational title, but that's fine. I mean, it's already been, last I looked on YouTube alone, it was viewed about 40,000 times just in the past few weeks. And this video makes a case for the fact that some of these UFOs may be, in my opinion, organic, that they might be living things. And some people, they think of that word organic and they think, oh, well, that doesn't make sense because organic seems to be something like a human. They think of a soft, warm, fleshy thing like a person is. But the reality is it's not necessarily that at all. If you take a human and grind that person up and look at it under a microscope, you find iron and copper and zinc and sulfur and magnesium and all these things that we consider inorganic or inanimate. And also, if you look at things that are living and you look at the diversity, trees, insects, bacteria, you start to realize that to call these things organic simply means that maybe there's not a little guy sitting at a steering wheel inside of them, that instead that they are a different arrangement of these things that we associate with life, but that they are traveling and operating and behaving and interacting in some way that seems to be conscious, that they are interacting with us because they are sensitive to what we are thinking and feeling. And so that's sort of ultimately, I think, the big idea here is that we expand the way that we categorize things, and we realize that trying to view everything in terms of the human reference point vastly limits us.
Absolutely. And when you say that, it reminds me of the work of Trevor James Constable.
Yes.
And the Space Critters. And I think, I have a couple of his books, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, I believe that the more I research that there is something organic, as you say, just something living here, and it has been here for a long time. I mean, I think we're dealing with a lot of different types of things, but to me, the more I learn, to jump to the extraterrestrial hypothesis, I just don't know if that fits for me at this point.
Well, I think there are probably lots of things happening here. I am in no way suggesting that we dismiss the possibility that there are ships flying around being piloted by extraterrestrial beings. What I am saying, however, is that this particular phenomenon, which I featured in this particular video report, which, by the way, took me 4 years to put together. This 12-minute report is the product of 4 years of careful, thoughtful research. What I'm saying here is that I think this particular phenomenon, which is also not just a product of what's happening here in the Bermuda Triangle in Puerto Rico, but as I showed in the video, also may be happening in other places like Denver, Colorado, is some type of a phenomenon that seems, in my opinion, to have more organic attributes than what we would consider an ET ship. And what you also have to consider is that if these things are around us all the time and they're flying at very high rates of speed, well, it would not be a surprise that we would not have more evidence, because how many people are just pointing a camera up in the sky for hours and hours and hours and then going back and watching it in slow motion? How boring is that?
Pretty boring, I would know.
That's super boring. And so, I think that now that I have put this video out there, and anybody who goes to my website, and thank you for mentioning joshuapwarren.com, there's a link right there at the top of the website you can click that will give you access to this video and the report. When you watch this video, and you see what I'm talking about and what I'm trying to illustrate and demonstrate, it makes you realize that, hey, maybe the next step is to take some really high-speed cameras and put them at some of these hot spots and just record the sky for hours and then put that footage into some type of a software program that will do the watching for us, that will recognize what birds and insects and airplanes and all that stuff looks like and differentiate between those things and what we are seeing, so that we can actually start getting more and better and clearer evidence of whatever these things are.
Exactly. And Chris O'Brien was talking about that. I know that he plans on doing that in the area that he's at, the San Luis Valley. And then, I would like to do that here in Utah. There are several areas of the periphery of Dugway. We've got the Salt Lake Valley, lots of reports over the Ochre Mountains, and then, of course, the notorious Skinwalker Ranch. And I think that to get instrumentation in there and to get kind of a cohesive group of people who are doing the same type of thing in these hot spots. And we can also, if we can learn from some of the people like James Bunnell, who did an extensive study in Marfa, Texas, and David Akers in Yakima, different people like that we could really make some headway.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree entirely, because we have this sort of false impression that there are cameras everywhere, and so therefore anything that's real should be caught on camera. I mean, like I was at one time I was sitting at a table with a group of friends, and I pulled out a $20 bill, and I said, I'm going to give this $20 bill to whoever can take a picture of the salt shaker first. And everybody started scrambling, for their phones. And the guy who took the first picture, it took him close to 10 seconds, actually, to get his phone out and, do what he needed to do and take that picture. And so we have this impression that everybody's got a camera. There are security cameras everywhere. So if this stuff is flying around, then we ought to have a lot more footage of it. But again, the camera that you have is only taking a picture of what you already know most of the time. You're focusing it somewhere. Same thing with security cameras. They're not there to pick up UFOs. I mean, they're there to look at your property and so very few people are actually just shooting the sky and watching it in slow motion. And if we do more of that, we'll see more of these things. I have no doubt whatsoever.
And, I have to say that the video that you did, your report, is incredible, because there was, of course, the big case, the Aguadilla case that made international news, and then you had people coming out trying to debunk that. But you have done meticulous work interviewing people and then filming things yourself that are truly unexplainable.
Yeah, well, I've lived down here a good chunk of each year for the past 4 years. I started coming to Puerto Rico about 10, 11 years ago. And for over 4 years now, I have spent, again, a good chunk of each year down here. And I'm not in San Juan. For anybody who knows Puerto Rico, if you look at your hand, the palm of your hand is kind of shaped like the island. And so on the northeastern corner, you have San Juan. And then on the southwestern corner, you have Boquerón and Cabo Rojo. And that is where I am. I am about literally an 8-minute drive from the Laguna Cartagena, which is a notorious spot for UFOs and USOs going in and out of the water. And so being here in Puerto Rico, I've been in a situation where people now have gotten to sort of know me, and I stand out like a sore thumb. Okay, you've met me in person. I'm 6'2". I look like Frosty the Snowman walking down the street here, and I do not look like a guy who's been sun worshiping on the beach. That's for sure. So everybody knows me, and they've gotten to sort of trust me, and so I get the latest gossip on anything weird. And I will never forget. This island is 100 miles by 35 miles, and in 2013, I walked to a local bar, which I am sometimes known to do, and
you rebel.
Yeah, and there was a guy who I'd known from just town who was actually working there, and he was so excited to see me. He said, Josh, he says, listen, he goes, my brother works at the Homeland Security Department in Aguadilla. And he said, they got a UFO on camera last night, and they can't explain it. And he said, my brother actually showed me some of this footage, and he said, it's going to blow your mind. And so I was really excited. And I said, well, how can I see it? And he says, well, I need to talk to my brother. And so days went by, and I hadn't seen this footage. By that time, word had spread everywhere. Like, everybody on this side of the island knew that something had been captured at that Homeland Security airport office. And finally, he said, well, look, they're really clamping down on it. I can't get a copy of it. And so at that point, I just kind of blew it off, because I hear a lot of stories just like you, and you're thinking, well, some of this stuff could just be people getting excited over nothing. And then finally, this got leaked somehow on the internet. Now, I don't know how it got leaked. Frankly, I don't want to know how it got leaked, because this is Homeland Security footage, and the last thing I want is to show up in some congressional hearing trying to describe how I know that some kind of footage got leaked on the internet, right?
Yeah, that would be bad.
Yeah, and that's and so, but I continued talking to people who were connected to that office who told me that it was real. And then, of course, you have this 162-page report, which anybody can read, that is incredibly detailed about this footage as well, that's posted there with the video. So, I mean, this was, to me, mind-boggling, because this wasn't something that just appeared on the internet one day. No, I'm here among the population, among the people who know each other, who are related to each other, and everybody knew that somebody had captured this footage when it occurred.
So it's interesting to me, as with a lot of these different types of events, to see people that when, people start to get critical of footage like this, that people who should be standing up and saying, this is why this is perhaps authentic, kind of jump ship. Did you find that any of the people that you worked with on this case kind of jumped ship?
No, actually, to be honest with you, to this day, nobody has said to me that they doubt the authenticity of this video. When we were talking just before the show, and you said that there were some people who were doubting the authenticity, this is the first time I've ever heard that. I've never heard that from anybody before.
And that's interesting. I mean, because unfortunately, sometimes I spend a little too much time on Facebook, and there's always that contingent. They're trying to debunk things, and then you've got people saying that, oh, this is a pelican, and all of this stuff. But I think that will always be the case, no matter what evidence you have. There will always be somebody to come out and say, nope, this isn't the case, and it's unfortunate.
Well, I mean, one of the great things about the video presentation is that I started by showing that, but then I continued showing all kinds of other evidence from various other sources, including some of my own footage that I can personally vouch for, that I personally captured. I am the individual who solely captured some of this stuff. So even if that footage were fake, and boy, that would be a hell of a work of art if somebody had hoaxed that footage, and not just that, but the whole analysis and everything. I mean, that would be like a work of beauty if somebody actually could pull that one off. But even if that were proven to be the case, that's just one part of a very, I think, strong case that there is something like this that's flying around down here. But as far as thinking that's a pelican, I mean, for one thing, we're looking at infrared thermal video footage, which gives us data. This thing's traveling 120 miles per hour at 9:20 p.m. It dips under the water going 95 miles per hour. And then when it finally emerges, it's joined by a second object. And then they both disappear back down into the ocean right near the Puerto Rico Trench, which is so deep that when I recently went to the beach where this occurred, here I was standing there on the beach, beautiful, beautiful secluded beach, by the way, big craggy cliffs with waves crashing on the rocks, just beautiful. And I'm thinking, God, I wish I had a time machine. I'd like to go back and see what this thing looked like as it was going down into the water. And as I was doing that, I imagined, well, what if all this water were gone? And if all that water were gone in that particular area, it would almost look like that I was standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon, except the Grand Canyon is only 6,000 feet deep. And there is a crevasse there that's almost 30,000 feet deep. So big you could sit Mount Everest down in there and just the tip would be sticking up. And there is no telling what is down there in that Puerto Rico Trench. And to me, it creeps me out, but it's exciting because anybody who is not creeped out and excited by what's down there doesn't have an imagination and cannot understand what we're talking about.
And you're not living, clearly. If you can't be creeped out and have a good time, I don't know what to tell you. And that's so incredible. And I think the thing that's so powerful about your research in this 12-minute clip is the fact that you're interviewing a man that I would like to talk about when we get back from break that has had profound experiences, the same types of things. And then you look back historically, you look back at some of the oral traditions and things that have gone on. I mean, you look at that and then you put it in perspective and you look at the Native American culture. You look at indigenous peoples all over the world and they're having the same types of experiences. They're calling it something different, but that's profound. So perhaps there is something, like you're saying, that is organic, that has been interacting with us since, the beginning of recorded history. And it is mind-boggling because there's so many places on the planet to hide. And then you look at the kind of the hollow earth thing. And I've got to bounce this off you before we go to break, but you hear about in these hot spots the underground sounds.
Mm-hmm. Well, sure. I mean, it would make sense that there is some kind of a sound created, because what is, to us, a sound is just a vibration. And vibration is what accompanies life and activity. And so if you've got some kind of a bustling operation that's happening, whether it's under the water or in caves, you're going to have these types of hums, like the Dowse hum and strange things like that. And it's so weird to just talk to some of these people, like without getting into detail. I know we have to take a break. I talked to this guy who was in his 80s, who'd been a fisherman his whole life. And he said, look, I've been going out here fishing for almost 80 years. He says, I've only had one paranormal experience in my whole life. And he told me where it was. He told me when it was. He's out there fishing at night. And this green saucer just comes blasting out of the water at 4:30 in the morning and shoots off into the sky. I mean, there is something happening in these areas on the planet that we have not yet thoroughly explored.
Absolutely, and we're going to talk more about that and getting proper instrumentation and all of this stuff. I'm so excited. And then we're going to talk about Brown Mountain, which is, I'm thrilled to talk about this. I'm Erica Lukes here with Joshua Warren. The best is yet to come, so stick around. We will be back.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at ufoclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
Now, broadcasting in digital HD radio.
The disc landed at a ranch at Corona, New Mexico. The rancher turned it over to the Air Force. Rancher W.W. Brazil was the man who discovered the saucer.
What I thought was a star began coming in my direction at a very rapid rate of speed.
The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
I saw a UFO, and it went down the river, turned right at the United Nations, turned left, and then down the river.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
No more plausible deniability. Fact, fiction, or the truth. You decide. And now, the new voice of the high desert, the hostess of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes.
Welcome back and happy Fantopia Friday. I am Erica Lukes here on the best digital broadcasting network on the planet. In fact, I was just telling Tina Marie how much I adore her and her hard work, and I am so happy to be a part of KCOR because they are professional. Tina does an amazing job of not only making me sound good, but having such a great network, and I love that. There are ethical standards and professional standards, and we need that in this field. I'm proud to be on KCOR. I want to tell all of you, and there are my favorite people in the world in chat room tonight. Jeff Cox is over in Japan, and I'm sending he and his wife a lot of love. Naomi, I am so sorry that you're going through what you're going through, and Jeff, I love you. So can't wait to see you. I want to just let you know that if you're in Washington State next weekend, I will be speaking at the ECETI Ranch. I get to go up to the Yakima Indian Reservation and do some field research, which will be very exciting for me. And I also get to see how James Gilliland and his group meditate and vector in craft, which I know is controversial with some people, but I have to say, have you been there and have you done it? Have you seen it with your own eyes? And so perhaps, maybe you can give me your opinion when you do that. That's what I think. My guest this evening is an international TV personality. He's been on Coast to Coast, many different TV shows. He's a published author, creator of Speaking Strange Radio, president of Shadowbox Enterprises, owner of the Asheville Mystery Museum, which is really creepy, and we're going to talk about that. And he owns Haunted Asheville Ghost Tours. Joshua Warren has done incredible research. I encourage you to buy his books, specifically How to Hunt Ghosts, because this ties into researching UFOs. When we left off, we were talking about a 90-year-old fisherman who had never seen anything, but then saw a huge green saucer lift up out of the water. So Joshua, I mean, Lord, you bring up a good point you did in the last segment about the fact that you can go your whole life and never see anything and then have one experience that rocks your world.
Yeah, and that's what really impresses me sometimes because, a person like myself, I'm out there all the time pursuing strange things. And so, I get thousands of emails, sometimes in 1 week, which, by the way, I read every email. It's physically impossible for me to respond to each one, but I do read them all, and I get all these fantastic opportunities to go to places and access things and investigate things that the average person would not get to see or experience. And so it would make sense that a person like me, who is out there all the time publicizing myself, would see or document more strange things than the average person. But when you talk to someone who has lived his or her entire life in a fairly normal way, and then that person says, oh yeah, there was this one time that I saw this, and that person has absolutely nothing to gain from it. I mean, not, and we're not even talking about like not an appearance on a radio show, or because some people just want that. They just want to say, "Hey, look, I'm on TV." I mean, none of that. When you just talk to a person who says, "Yeah, this happened one time," it's pretty amazing because it makes sense that ordinarily it would occur that way, because paranormal means beyond normal. So this is not stuff that's supposed to happen on a daily or weekly or monthly basis even, which also is why a lot of these TV programs and stuff, they're pretty desperate to make sure they have something every week, for the show. So that can lead them to maybe sacrifice some of their standards. But in the real world, when you talk to real people who say, look, I've lived my whole life and I have no idea what this is, I can't explain anything about it, but here's what happened, it's very impressive and convincing.
It is. And I have had a few people that I've worked with who have had such life-changing experiences. I mean, we're talking shake you to your core, and it has been so hard. And I'm thinking of one person in particular who couldn't even share it with his wife. And it was after a couple years of just talking and moving him through that process that he could actually share it with his wife. And it was a really great experience for him to do that. But I mean, some of these things are so out of the norm. And it's a lot for us to process. And it's interesting to see, and you've probably seen this too, how each of us, we could be all standing observing the same object, but yet we are going to rationalize it differently and take away something different. And I noticed that with a couple of my friends, and we could sit there and watch something that truly could not be explained. It wasn't a mundane thing, but yet they would, there was that initial shock, and then it was, a day later, oh, well, it must have been this or that, and they're grasping for things that are explainable just to make them feel better.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that really interests me about this whole field is the power of the subjective interpretation when it comes to something that is new and unknown. So, you can just talk about basic human behavior that we pretty much know what to expect all the time. We see something and we very quickly figure out what it is and how it's supposed to work. And so when you see a phenomenon that does not immediately click into your previous experience, you enter this bizarre mental state. I think of it as being like a caveman looking at fire for the first time. And that's how I felt the very first time I ever saw a ghost. And by the way, I spent, I would say, a good 6 years investigating supposedly haunted places before I ever saw what I would consider a ghost. And I'd reached the point where I felt, well, maybe some people can see these things and some people cannot. Maybe it's a matter of genetics. The rods and the cones and the eyes have to be in a certain combination, or maybe it has something to do with the way the synapses are firing in the brain. I'm coming up with all these explanations for why that I might not be able to see this stuff that everybody's talking about. And then when that finally changed, when I finally was in an attic of a house with another researcher, and he said, "Josh, look," and I turned, and right there between the two of us was this big blue-gray misty form swirling in the air. There was this moment which was, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't freaked out. It was almost like literally a blank spot between my ears for I don't even know how many seconds. And the same for him. We're just sitting there looking at this thing, and I imagine that somewhere in my brain I'm going through the filing cabinet. Okay, well, what is this? Where does this fit in? How do I explain this? And then finally, when you reach the point where the brain just goes, I don't know, then you realize, oh my God, I'm seeing something truly extraordinary. And I reached out and touched it, and it was icy cold in the middle. It made the hair stand up on my knuckles, similar to what happens when you put your hand up to an electrostatic charge, like one of these old TV screens. And my friend, he did the same thing. So he is on the opposite side. We're both touching this thing, looking at it just in silence. And then it started to dim, and it got dimmer and dimmer, and then I realized, oh crap, I have a camera. This whole time I'd had a camera around my neck, and I took a photograph of it just before it disappeared. And people who go to my website, joshuapwarren.com, can click on a menu there item that says Gallery of the Strange, and you'll find it in there. So, okay, we both saw it. We both touched it. I took a photograph of it. What else am I supposed to do to prove this was real? I don't have a Ghostbusters trap that I can kick out there and stomp and suck it in so I can release it in a jar in my museum. And so that made me very frustrated that I saw something that was real. I touched it. There was a witness there. I photographed it. And so that was extremely inspirational to me. And I'm still on that mission to do whatever I can to document that this is a real phenomenon.
Oh, wow. So when you go in to do investigations, what are the key pieces of equipment you would recommend, or what do you use?
Well, the first thing that I do is go in and try to figure out what is normal And that is a crucial step that is unfortunately overlooked by a lot of investigative teams. You need to know what your baseline is, what this place is usually like. So I'll go in there, and I have a variety of electromagnetic field meters that can measure a variety of different frequencies, some of them associated with household electronics and appliances and wiring, some that are just not, and they're going to pick up whatever erratic sort of fluctuation you might get within a certain range. I have an electrostatic field detector, so I measure the electrostatic charge that is building up on objects, whether it's more positive or negative, and that's literally in an electrostatic terminology, not to mean good or bad, just what we call the different charges. I measure the temperature. I measure the humidity. I will measure for alpha, beta, gamma, X-rays. I have Geiger counters and radiation detectors just to see if there's a correlation. I'll try to create the most complete profile possible of what this place is normally like. And one of the things that I think that I specialize in is analyzing the design, or if you want to be so bold to call it the architecture of a particular structure. Because the design of a house, for example, determines the way that the natural electrostatic charges build up and travel throughout the structure. And so that's why, you might go into a house that has a big, long staircase that connects 3 or 4 stories, and this is where they see the ghost floating down the stairs. Well, it also happens to be where you can actually find a flow of electrostatic charges, which is just from atmospherics. You have clouds moving over top of the house. You have the ground below. And so you find a connection between the charges in the house and the manifestation of the phenomenon. And that makes sense because these things need some kind of a power supply in order to transition from non-physical to what we can consider physical or interactive or observable. So I bring in equipment that lets me analyze all the property, the capacitance of every item in a particular area, and get my baselines before I then use that to compare with something anomalous that might occur during the investigation.
And so I have to ask you, because, you can get different types of EMF detectors, and this has been something that Jeff and I have been looking into and purchasing different things. But what do you recommend?
I love the Tri-Field Natural EM meter. I really like that device. It's always been very reliable. They're hardcore. I've got 2 or 3 of them. There actually are 2 different models. There might even be another model that I'm not aware of. But without getting too technical, the Model 1, for example, allows you to pick up electric fields, magnetic fields, electromagnetic fields, radio waves, microwaves, and the Model 2 actually has a jack where you can plug an antenna into it, and which has a coil inside of it, which magnifies the range that you're able to pick up if you're doing magnetic or electromagnetic or radio microwave. And so I really have always loved the Tri-Field Natural EM meter. And for one thing, if you walk, just sometimes depending on the conditions, you can walk like 10 feet from this thing, and it will pick up the charge just coming from the human body. And it's really interesting because sometimes in the past I have done demonstrations where I'll go to a school and I'll have some big man who will walk up toward that meter, and it won't detect his field until he's maybe 3 feet, 4 feet from it. And then I'll have some little kid, like some little second grader, who will walk up 12, 13, 14 feet away. Boom, it picks them up right off the bat.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's so interesting to do that. And also I use, visualization techniques. I have Kirlian cameras and things like that that I use in order to try to get imagery of the electrostatic discharge coming from the body as well. So, but long story short, I would definitely put the Tri-Field Natural EM meter on your list.
Absolutely, and I agree with you, and I've heard that from numerous people. So, when you're investigating, have you ever tried like a ghost box?
Yeah, I have. There are different types of quote unquote ghost boxes. And the thing is, when it comes to ghostly audio in general, I have very stringent critical standards of what I consider acceptable. And that's because, like right now, if I say the word zebra to you, you heard what I just said and you understood it and you immediately envisioned a zebra. But if I walk up and I play some sound to you and you say, I don't get it, I'm like, oh, it says zebra. Well, now I'm suggesting to you and what you're going to hear. And then if I play it again, you say, oh, I can hear it now. It says zebra. Well, I expect audio to be that clear to begin with. Otherwise, I don't even pay attention to it. And I have very good friends who are EVP experts, so to speak, and they really, they disagree with me. But I think that most of these ghost box type devices, whether they are designed to capture an EVP or scan through a bunch of frequencies and take little snippets of what is being picked up from 50 radio stations and combine them all together into something, it's just not enough. It's to me, it's like a Ouija board. Have fun with it. If you want, toy with it, but it's not going to really give us any solid information about what's happening here.
Interesting. But speaking of Ouija boards, do you feel though that is kind of the gateway to inviting something negative into your life?
Well, it can be. I mean, the idea of inviting anything into your life starts with your mental point of view, whether there's a Ouija board there or not. The Ouija board itself has no inherent power. And believe me, I've talked to a lot of people who've told me some creepy Ouija board stories, and I have no doubt they are true. But I have done numerous experiments in my own laboratory in the Asheville Mystery Museum where I will take people who claim they have good Ouija board chemistry and they sit down and they start getting all kinds of messages working together. And I say, okay, now I'm going to change the variables a little bit, and I blindfold both of them. And when I do that, all of a sudden the board starts speaking gibberish. And so what that shows me is that the Ouija board is a tool that people can sometimes use in order to tap into their own subconscious or latent psychic abilities.
Okay. So it's like tarot cards. Which I think, with the tarot cards and things like that, it's the same type of thing. You're tapping in, or the pendulum, you're tapping into your own ability.
Well, the pendulum, yes. Tarot cards are a little different. Tarot cards and things like that fall into the category of clairomancy, which is actually much more interesting on some levels because it is the idea that the universe has so many different variables swirling around all the time that if you take something that's supposed to be random and you look at it, there is going to be some kind of an organization that appears. So there is something to be said for that, actually, whether you're using, dice or casting lots or whatever. I think that clairomancy is very intriguing because there cannot be an effect without a cause. To say there is an effect without a cause doesn't make any type of sense based upon anything that we know about science and how the world works. And so if you take something that is supposed to be random, it's not random. And we think of it as random, but it's really not. Something is determining how those quote unquote random effects turn out. And so I think that tarot cards and things that tap into this combination of various energies in the environment, they do have something to tell us about the language of the universe.
So what about random number generators?
Well, it's interesting that you ask me that because I right now And you're like reading my mind. You're telepathically tapping into something here, Erica.
Well, I think somebody in my chat room is, and then it's all this kind of cohesive thing.
Okay, well, I actually am looking right now at a random number generator. And I have got actually 3 different forms of, call them a random event generator or random number generators, all sitting in front of me. One of them is actually a roulette wheel. Which, by the way, I earlier today played a roulette wheel, and I did very well at it, just to show you that I actually take some of this stuff and I apply it in the field. So I am doing experiments where I'm taking various types of random event and random number generators, and I am firing them all off at the same time, so to speak, and seeing if I can influence them to come up with the same kind of consistent result. Very soon, I will be putting a video about this out on my website, and I hope anybody listening who is interested will sign up for my free e-newsletter there on my website, where I will be sending that video and some other cool stuff soon. But yes,
I love it. Oh my gosh, I want to talk a little bit more about that when we get back from break, but I have to say that I love your emails. So everyone should go to joshuapwarren.com and sign up, and then just look at all of the information that you have. And you're doing so much, and you're really thinking outside the box. And I adore that about you. I think that's needed.
Well, you're just the kindest, sweetest person ever. Thank you.
Well, there
so
might be
much.
some that disagree.
I'm going to hire you as my new publicist.
Oh, I would love to do that. That would be fun. Oh, but we're going to take our last break. I'm Erica Lukes, and I just want to thank everyone in chat. We are going to be right back, and the best is yet to come.
Stand by.
This is UFO Classified with Erica Lukes.
Erica Lukes.
The phone lines are open now at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio. More UFO Classified.
UFO Classified
with Erica Lukes on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. After this.
This is Mario Andretti. You know me as a race car driver, but I'm also a Meals on Wheels volunteer. I've raced against the sport's biggest personalities, but I've never met more vibrant, amazing people than the seniors served by Meals on Wheels. You can make a difference by dropping off a hot meal and saying a quick hello. So, America, let's do lunch. Volunteer your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
This message brought to you by Meals on Wheels.
This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen to.
Monday nights are about to become hauntingly good, as Reverend Sean Whittington possesses the airwaves with Vegas Supernatural. Tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for Vegas Supernatural, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. There's a war raging between good and evil. The question is, which side are you fighting on? Tune in Monday nights as Reverend Sean Whittington sets the new standard for paranormal radio with some of the most influential personalities in the world today. Vegas Supernatural, hosted by Reverend Sean Whittington, every Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The one show even the devil doesn't want you to hear.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. Jump onto the Celestial Highway and travel at the speed of light into hyperspace. Hyperspace, hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live, Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific.
For Hyperspace.
The one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace, hosted by Solaris Blue Raven.
Solaris Blue Raven.
Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Want to take a ride? Take a ride. Take a ride.
That's
good. Good.
Turn your radio up. I love it. All the music I want to hear. This is my station.
If ever a breed was affectionate to a fault, it's the Golden Retriever. They're people dogs, pure and simple. And the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada needs your help. If you would like to volunteer, foster, adopt, or donate, go to the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada's website at grrsn.org. That's grrsn.org. Or call 598-GOLD. That's 598-GOLD.
You're listening to UFO Classified with Erica Lukes, where the truth isn't hidden beneath the black lines of a Sharpie.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
To be on with Erica, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Radio contact.
Share your thoughts on the show on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Or head over to the live chats at KCORradio.com.
The audience goes nuts.
And now, your host of UFO Classified.
Are you ready?
Erica Lukes. Erica Lukes.
Welcome back to the final segment of UFO Classified. I hope you all stick around for a wonderful night on KCOR. We've got a fantastic lineup of women here. So get comfy, grab a margarita, stick around. I love it. What a great way to spend Friday night with all of you. It's wonderful. My guest this evening is one of the world's best parapsychologists. He has been researching the paranormal, UFOs. He's been pushing boundaries. We were talking about random number generators and trying different experiments that are pushing the boundaries. Joshua Warren, finally, you're here. And you know that I've been like working you for a while.
Well, I am so happy to be on your program, and you know, you are such a talent. I mean, it's just a delight to talk with you. I think anybody listening can realize that, you know, you're able to bring out the most interesting aspects of your guests. So it's just always a pleasure to talk with you and correspond with you. And I'm just thank you again for having me on this program tonight.
Well, that's so nice of you. I love talking to people and hearing their stories and kind of doing something different. And I think for me, you know, what has always kind of attracted me to your work is the fact that you look at the paranormal and you look at all of the things that are happening with, you know, cryptozoology and then the UFO phenomenon, and you understand that the lines are so blurry that we have to look at all of this together, and that's critical to what we're doing.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things that I believe connects all of this is time, frankly. Because if you look at ghostly phenomena, usually people are talking about seeing something that's out of its appropriate place and time, something from the past or occasionally something from the future. When it comes to UFOs, you have these stories about people who, let's say, are driving down the road in the middle of nowhere, the UFO appears overhead, the truck stops working, and then the UFO flies away and the truck starts working again. It's not like that the driver had to turn the ignition. So again, it almost seemed as if time was paused. You have these reports about cryptids where, you know, you're following the footprints down the pathway, and all of a sudden the footprints just end in the middle of the pathway, and it's almost like this cryptid has altered its position in space. And we know that space and time are connected. And so, again, there's time. And the same can be said for psychic phenomena, et cetera. So there at least seems to be some definable consistency among these things that we often consider paranormal.
Oh, isn't that great? And I love this. I mean, there's so many, the more I learn, and I know you feel the same way, the more I question reality and everything, and I think it's a trip, and I love it, and I feel so grateful that I'm here. But, you know, I want to say we've got somebody in a very important caller who's been waiting patiently, and he's been a guest on my show before. Dr. Bruce Cornett is waiting, and he wants to ask you a few questions. Bruce, how are you?
I'm very fine. Thank you very much for letting me talk to Joshua. I'm fascinated by his website.
Isn't it amazing? And I know that you had, because we had communicated before the show, but you had a couple questions specifically that you wanted to ask him, so ask away.
Well, he brought up one of the subjects about time and how the truck stopped. And I've had an abduction where I was in my high school band changing room, waiting for a changing locker, and talking to another student. And this little gray came zipping around and touched my forehead with a rod. And the next thing I remember, I was being laid down on the floor by 6 little grays, and they took off. And I was looking around saying, what the heck happened? And everybody in the room was in a frozen state of animation. They were completely immobile. And slowly, they gradually started to move back to normal. And then somebody noticed that I was on the ground. They came over and picked me up. And I asked the kid I was talking to, did you punch me? Because that was a screen memory that was given to me to account for how I got on the floor.
Wow. Well, first off, Dr. Cornett, thank you so much for calling in and giving that experience. I feel like that when we are dealing with these types of, say, encounters like you're describing, it almost makes us think that perhaps our whole world is very literally some form of virtual reality, that it actually is some kind of a matrix, and that some of these beings might be able to tap into it or hack into it. And here's what it reminds me of. You know how that sometimes somebody watches a TV program, let's say a news program, and they see that a celebrity has died. And then maybe a week later, the celebrity is alive again. And it makes you feel like that the whole timeline has been manipulated or warped in some way. It could be that some of these beings are beings from the future or outside of what we consider past, present, and future, and they're able to come in and occasionally manipulate what we perceive as time. Would you think that might be applicable to your experience?
Very much so. I've told people that I feel like this world is a fishbowl, and there are many beings watching us and interacting with us throughout our lives. And I just happen to have some that just follow me around wherever I go.
And you know what? I've got to interrupt because both of you have been involved. I mean, Bruce specifically with Skinwalker Ranch and Bigelow, and Josh, I mean, you've done extensive work with the Brown Mountain Lights, and I believe that these areas they share a lot of commonalities. And so I wanted to get each of your take on that.
Yeah, sure.
One thing I want to ask you, have you heard of Jim Bunnell and the Marfa Lights?
Oh yeah. Actually, I've investigated the Marfa Lights in person. I had the fortune of growing up about an hour's drive away from the Brown Mountain Lights, so I spent a good chunk of my life, 15 to 20 years, investigating the Brown Mountain Lights. I only got to spend a couple days in Marfa, so I don't know nearly as much. But what I can tell you about the Marfa Lights is that they seem to be a related but a slightly separate phenomenon, because that when the Marfa Lights appear, it seems like that the perspective of the person watching them has some kind of impact on how they appear. Whereas with Brown Mountain, it seems to be more like some type of a plasma or a more physical thing. But nonetheless, yes, I definitely think Marfa is fascinating, and I would love to spend more time there researching it.
Absolutely. As you know. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, Bruce, you know that I'm a huge fan of James Bunnell, and I cannot wait to actually talk to him.
He wrote the Bible on the Marfa Lights, and his most recent book is absolutely, scientifically, the most credible research I've ever seen. And he had a platform out there which were autonomously recording all of this stuff, just as Josh and you were talking about.
And you did that, Josh. I mean, you and your group did that pretty extensively in Brown Mountain.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I wrote a booklet, I'll call it, that is the most concise, comprehensive overview of the history of the Brown Mountain Lights and the work that my team and I have done and some of the latest conclusions, which you can download for free as a PDF. If you just go to brownmountainlights.com, the word mountain is all spelled out. If you go to brownmountainlights.com and you scroll down, you'll find that PDF you can click and download. Also at joshuapwarren.com, I include that with a PDF bundle that's available in my Curiosity shop. But the great thing about that PDF is that I get into specifics, and for somebody who wants even more specifics, I also have a whole report there on the Brown Mountain website that gets really technical. I mean, if you want to really get into the nuts and bolts of what we've researched, then you can find that there as well.
And it's incredible because I have looked at that many a time. And I want to say that I heard you talk with Tim Beckley. You guys were doing an interview, and you were mentioning some of the military activity. And there was a specific incident where there were shots fired. Do you remember that?
Yeah. You're talking about the hunter who was coming back from his hunting trip and saw a weird phenomenon out in the field. Is that the one you're thinking of?
You know what I was thinking, and it could be, but I was thinking more about there was like a military convoy that was seen in the area. Yeah, it's part of the same story. Okay.
Because this is one of those things where at Brown Mountain, which is, by the way, for people who have no idea what we're talking about, Brown Mountain is in the middle of the Pisgah National Forest in western North Carolina. And for over 100 years, people have reported seeing these mysterious multicolored balls of light floating around this mountain. And so my team and I spent, 15, 20 years getting permits from the Forest Service and camping up there and doing all kinds of research with various different experts. And while I was up there, I had a lot of interviews that I did with locals, people who lived there their whole lives. And there was one hunter that I talked to who had told me that he, on a number of occasions, would be back up in the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden a military, Humvee would come blasting by, and then he would wonder, well, where's that thing going? And he would get to the end of the trail, and there was nothing there. Where did the Humvee go? Well, it obviously must have gone underground because I doubt it flew away. And then I talked to this hunter who said that he was walking out in the morning right as the sun was coming up, and he passed a field. And over to his right, he saw something shining, a mirror-like reflection in this field. And he walked over, curious, and he looked down, and he said when he got right up next to it, he didn't see the reflection. All he saw was a hole in the ground that was pretty deep. He said it was, a hole about the size of $50. But the hole was deep enough that, I think he said he poked his finger in it and he didn't feel the bottom. And he was like, well, that's bizarre. So he went out and he did his day of hunting. And as it was getting close to evening, he comes walking back on the same trail. And this time he looked over and he sees a bunch of activity now that is occurring in that field. There were a bunch of, big military-looking vehicles that were parked around where he had seen this hole. And he sees all of these silhouettes of men walking around. I always imagine scenes like from a Spielberg movie where, all the headlights are beaming through the mist or whatever, and you see all these shadowy figures kind of moving around it. And so he said to himself, well, I'm going to go over there and see what the heck's going on. So he made his way halfway there, and all of a sudden, several men just opened up full blast with automatic weapons, shooting the hell out of that spot on the ground. He said it scared him to death. He immediately hit the ground, And as soon as they stopped firing, he got up and he ran as fast as he could and got out of there. And we still have no explanation for why he saw that, what he saw. But these are the kinds of oddball stories that you get from people who see various uncanny things near or on Brown Mountain.
And when I heard you talk about that story, the first thing that came to my mind was the story that has gone around about Bigelow, on Skinwalker Ranch, when there were the security guards, this portal that supposedly opened up and these creatures crawled out of it, and the security guards engaged in gun, they were shooting at it. And some reports have it that the security guards passed away. So, I mean, it's incredible to hear these stories and whether they can be validated, whether there's something really there. That's a mystery, but it is rather curious.
Well, yeah, I mean, what you find over and over again is that people get little fragmented glimpses of these things. And nobody knows what the entire big picture is. If you're in my position, at least you can take a lot of these pieces and you can try to put them together and maybe get closer to the big picture than anybody else is. But one individual just gets to see one little part. And when you see that one little part, it's so weird. It's like the story about, the blindfolded man, reaches out and feels a tail. And what is this creature? He's feeling the tail of an elephant, but there's no way he can see the whole elephant. And so this is the nature of that candle in the dark, of trying to describe something that's truly unknown based upon these little multifaceted, fragmented glimpses that people get. And you find that a lot when it comes to true, real, authentic, solid mysteries.
So what do you, did what you think about this whole thing 10 years ago? Has that changed dramatically?
Not really, because, the way I feel about it, in the beginning, I went in with a completely open mind investigating Brown Mountain. And what I mean by that is that on its face, all you really have is a blank slate. You have weird lights on a mountain. Okay, what is it? Well, you talk to physicists and they will talk about plasmas and perhaps ball lightning and things like that. You talk to geologists, they'll talk about piezoelectricity. You talk to chemists, they'll talk about swamp gas. You talk to ufologists, and they'll say, well, this is the mother landing ship base or whatever.
Right.
You talk to spiritualists, they'll say, well, these are the spirits of Native Americans. It just goes on and on. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go in with a totally open mind and just document as much as I can, talk to everybody, listen to everybody, bring experts up there with me to camp. I brought a physicist with me from the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. I brought a professional geologist with me who does work for the UN. I brought forest rangers. I brought an actual rocket scientist from Ohio State University. I brought all kinds of people up there and camped with them so that they could oversee our work and be a part of this. And ultimately, what I concluded was that, okay, these lights, when they appear, they are producing an interference pattern that can be picked up sometimes miles away using VLF detectors and other types of instruments, depending on the type of antenna that you're using. So this is very different from what you're going to get if you have, say, a four-wheeler headlight or a guy with a campfire or something like that. They appear, they're super high energy, and then I talked to a lot of people who were lucky enough to be close, and one guy even touched one, and it shocked him, and there was an electrical component. So ultimately, I think that the Brown Mountain lights can certainly be described as a form of plasma that is similar to ball lightning. Now, the next question is, does that mean this is solely a natural phenomenon, or does that simply mean that this phenomenon is a byproduct of a much more significant paranormal issue regarding the boundary between the physical and the non-physical between this dimension and other dimensions, and that what we're looking at is what we might consider a warp, a place that you can say is a phantasmagoria of strange things, because this spot on planet Earth is an exceptional spot, and that this just so happens to be one of the most visible and spectacular and striking aspects of this phenomenon.
Wow. You what, Bruce? Sorry, you were kind of breaking up.
I'm sorry. I think he's right. He's on target with the causes behind it. There's something else just beyond a physical explanation.
So did you get the sense, Josh? I mean, and obviously you're looking at this from a researcher's point of view, so it's you're there, you're doing your job, but did you ever get an intuitive sense that there was something intelligent behind what you were witnessing?
Yeah, I actually did. And what's funny is that even people who are trying to look at this as nothing more than a natural phenomenon have to admit that there is something there that is interactive. And the explanation that you'll hear a lot of scientists try to give is that, well, if this is some kind of an Earth plasma or something like that, it's got an electromagnetic field around it. So does a human. So if you walk toward it, it might move away from you, or if you walk away from it, it might follow you. You know, there's going to be some kind of a field interaction. That is the most basic way of trying to describe this. On the other hand, when I have interviewed these people going back through decades, through generations, who have had truly close encounters right up in front of these things, I hear again and again that they look inside and they see some kind of a being that looks like a little humanoid form inside. And therefore, you can just discount that as a story. But when you hear enough of these stories from so many different people, and I myself have witnessed how that these things seem to respond and often react to your desires and your wishes, it makes me think that there is something conscious about the lights. I don't know if there's a little guy sitting inside of them, as people have described it, but there does seem to be something conscious about them. But on the other hand, I also tend to believe that everything probably has some degree of life. Anything that's above absolute zero that's vibrating probably has some degree of life. And when you have a form like plasma that's so unstable and erratic, it just magnifies that sense of life, so that whether you're looking at those lights or you're looking at UFOs, there is another degree of life and consciousness that we're trying to deal with here.
Oh, wasn't that interesting? And I want to just thank Dr. Bruce Cornett for joining us, for calling in. Thank you so much, and we'll have you back on the show, Bruce. I will talk to you soon. And Josh, I just want to say, so your takeaway on all of this is that, well, I mean, I'm going to put words in your mouth, but that we should be open-minded, that we should learn proper investigative techniques, get out there and think outside the box. And I love that. I mean, I just like, I cannot wait to hang out with you.
Oh, yes. You and I have some extremely fun adventures in store, I have no doubt. And I also would like to make sure all your listeners realize that if you're like me, if you're like Erica, if you really want to get a full understanding of all these different subjects, I used to teach classes in person. You'd have to fly all the way to Asheville, North Carolina, and take time, like 6 weeks off of work, and do classes with me. But I got so many requests that I finally created an online course that you'll also find at joshuapwarren.com that digs into all this stuff. I'm talking, ghosts and spiritual activity, even controversial stuff like the idea of angels and demons and UFOs and cryptids and psychic phenomena. All that stuff, if you go to joshuapwarren.com, you'll find it there. And I have people all over the world, students who have taken the course, who love it. And so hopefully we'll have some listeners who decide to join us in our cause, Erica.
That is so cool. And I will be taking that course. And I didn't even get to talk about Robert tonight. Dang it. And the Asheville Mystery Museum. I mean, we're going to have several shows. But I want to thank you so much for being here. I knew this was going to be an absolutely educational and delightful experience. And I want to, encourage people to look at Joshua's work, to look at the Brown Mountains, look at the Marfa Lights, look at Yakima, Heshtall, and all of these places, because all of these places will teach us something, and it is incredible. So, Josh, thank you for being here tonight.
Hey, Erica, you're the best. Thank you so much for having me, and we'll be in touch again soon.
Absolutely. I know we will be. And I want to thank all my listeners from all over the world. You guys rock. I will not be here next week. It'll be pre-recorded, but I will be definitely giving, kind of updates on Facebook and Twitter about my experiences at ECETI Ranch. I can't wait to do field research. I want to thank all of you, Gabe, Gil, Northern UFOs, Susan, all of you mean so much to me. I appreciate it. Have a safe evening, and make sure you stick around for a wonderful night on KCOR.
Listen very carefully.
This is Houston. Say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
This is UFO Classified, live every Friday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The truth is out there, just waiting to be discovered.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
For more information on the host of UFO Classified, Erica Lukes, upcoming guests, as well as links to the past shows,
visit her website at ufoclassified.com.
UFO Classified.
UFO Classified.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network.